What seemed like just a minor case in a small town turned into a courtroom where the weight of corruption forced a young woman to kneel before the public eye. But that single, humiliating moment ignited a storm of upheaval never seen before. Shocking secrets, desperate counterattacks, and the ultimate sacrifice of a hero. All of it began right here, Jefferson County. Get ready to enter a story that left the entire nation stunned. Kayla Mitchell took a deep breath as she stood before the defendant's stand in the Jefferson County Courthouse. Her heart pounded in her chest, and sweat beaded on her cuffed palms. The courtroom was brightly lit with neon lights, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. Above, Judge Alan Prescott peered down at her through his glasses, his gaze sharp and emotionless. Beside her, a court officer stood guard, his hand resting lightly on his holster, as if ready to intervene at the slightest sign. Before the trial began, Kayla had managed to scan the audience for familiar faces. Jaden Walker, her close friend from high school, sat among the crowd. When their eyes met, Jaden gave a slight nod, his eyes reflecting a mix of worry and determination. Near Jaden, Grace Morgan, another of Kayla's friends, was also present, clutching her phone as if ready to record everything. Their presence lent Kayla a fragile sense of courage amidst the cold courtroom. Defendant Kayla Mitchell. Judge Prescott's voice rang out, deep and authoritative, cutting through her thoughts. Do you understand why you are here today? Kayla pressed her lips tightly. She knew all too well why she stood there in that humiliating orange prison uniform. Just 2 days ago, she had been an ordinary college student working part-time at a small cafe. But a horrifying incident had thrust her into this nightmare. She tried to keep her voice steady. Your Honor, I am charged with resisting law enforcement and disturbing the public order. Each word felt like a lump in her throat. Beneath the table, her hands clenched, nails digging into her skin. A scoff came from the prosecutor's side, but Prescott raised his hand for silence. He leaned forward, his voice even, "That's correct. According to the records, you were arrested by the Jefferson County Police last Saturday night. The report states you resisted and assaulted a police officer. Do you deny this?" The memory of that night flooded back like a slow-motion film. Saturday night. Kayla had finished her late shift and was driving home on the deserted highway. The streetlights cast a dim yellow glow on the dark road. Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights appeared behind her. A siren pierced the quiet night. Startled, she pulled over, heart racing. A tall police officer approached her window, shining a flashlight directly into her eyes, blinding her. "License, please." His voice was curt. Kayla trembled as she handed over her documents. She knew she hadn't violated any traffic laws. She was driving at the correct speed. Her taillights were functional. Everything was in order. "Is there a problem, officer?" He didn't answer immediately, instead scanning his flashlight around the car, pausing at the backpack on the passenger seat. "Where are you coming from at this hour?" he questioned, his eyes suspicious. I work the night shift at a cafe, just finished and heading home." Kayla tried to keep her voice polite. The officer glanced at the name tag on his chest. Carter. Officer Carter continued his questioning, then suddenly demanded she exit the vehicle and open the trunk. Kayla's heart tightened. "Is there something wrong, officer? Did I do something wrong?" she asked politely, hoping to avoid escalation. But Carter frowned. "Get out of the car now, or I'll consider this noncompliance." A sense of unease rose, and Kayla was forced to step out into the lonely night. She opened the trunk as instructed. The officer shone his light inside nothing but a spare tire and some miscellaneous items. Yet his gaze returned to her face, as if her very presence was a threat. "Do you live around here?" he asked pointedly. Kayla nodded, trying to remain calm. "Yes, I live in Greenfield, a few miles from here." Suddenly, Carter's eyes widened. "Have you been drinking or using any substances your eyes are bloodshot?" Kayla was stunned. "No, I'm just tired after my shift. I haven't had any alcohol or used anything." But the officer didn't seem convinced. He stepped closer, the smell of tobacco lingering. "Hands up, against the car." He barked. What was happening? Kayla, terrified, complied, her hands trembling. Officer Carter began patting her down roughly, muttering as if she were a dangerous criminal. She felt humiliated and angry, but bit her lip to endure. Suddenly, he stopped at her jacket pocket, pulling out her phone. "Were you recording me?" he growled. Seeing the camera app still open, Kayla had activated it earlier out of unease. I just had it on for my safety," she stammered. The officer's face turned red. "What do you mean you think I'm going to do something to you?" Before she could explain, he yanked her arms behind her back, in pain. Kayla cried out, "That hurts, please, calm down, I didn't mean—" But the cold click of handcuffs was his only response. "You're under arrest for resisting law enforcement," he shouted. "Illegal recording and defying a police officer." Before Kayla could comprehend what was happening, she was pulled back, her face pressed against the car hood. Cold. Pain. Tears streamed down her face in the terrifying darkness. No one was there to witness or help her. In that moment of despair, Kayla wondered if she was truly living in the 21st century or had been thrown back into a dark era where her skin color made her a criminal. Judge Prescott's gavel brought Kayla back to the harsh reality of the courtroom. "Defendant, I ask you again, do you contest these charges?" His cold voice echoed. Kayla looked up at the stern face of the judge. He appeared to be in his 60s, his graying hair neatly combed, the wooden gavel in his hand symbolizing absolute authority. This man held her fate, her throat dry. Kayla softly responded, "Your Honor, I didn't assault anyone. I was scared and tried to explain, but—" She stopped when she saw the warning glance from her court-appointed attorney standing beside her. He had advised her to remain silent and show remorse if she wanted leniency. Judge Prescott frowned. "Are you claiming you're innocent?" Kayla sensed the sarcasm in his voice. A surge of anger rose as she recalled how Officer Carter had treated her. But she suppressed it. Losing her temper now would only make things worse. I just want to say there was a misunderstanding. I have great respect for the law and the police, Your Honor," Kayla said, her voice trembling but sincere. "If I did anything wrong, I apologize, but I had no intention of resisting." Across the room, the prosecutor scoffed again, clearly disbelieving her words. Judge Prescott lightly tapped his gavel, his expression unchanged. "In my years on the bench, I've heard countless excuses. Do you think I have time for lies?" He leaned back, assessing Kayla from head to toe. "Look at yourself. Ms. Mitchell. The records show you were even fined for causing a public disturbance 2 years ago. Someone like you, driving alone at night, pulling out a phone when asked to cooperate with the police, do you call that non-resistance?" Kayla's face burned. She remembered that incident. She and some friends had participated in a street performance and were warned for making noise after curfew. That trivial matter was now being used to discredit her. Kayla bit her lip, speechless. The courtroom's atmosphere was suffocating. Jaden sat behind, gripping his phone tightly, his heart pounding with fear for his friend. Grace held her breath, watching intently. They both knew Kayla was gentle, never harming anyone. Seeing her treated so unjustly ignited their anger. Judge Prescott exchanged glances with the prosecutor, then turned back to the defendant. Ms. Mitchell, the court finds your attitude lacking genuine remorse. For the charge of resisting law enforcement, you could face up to 6 months in jail as per the law. However, he paused, creating a tense silence. If you truly repent, the court may consider leniency. Are you willing to admit your fault and apologize to Officer Carter here? Kayla was stunned. Apologize to Officer Carter, the man who abused his power and assaulted her without cause? And now she had to apologize to him. She turned to look at Officer Carter standing there, his face expressionless. The injustice surged within her, but Kayla knew she was in a weak position. If she refused, the judge might impose the harshest sentence. Choking back tears, Kayla replied, "Your Honor, if it pleases the court, I apologize." Her voice was barely a whisper, her eyes stinging. Prescott shook his head. Not enough. Your actions that night were reckless and disrespectful of the law. I want to see true remorse. Kneel and apologize to Officer Carter. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom. No one expected such a demand. The room fell silent in astonishment. Grace's mouth dropped open. Jaden was stunned. A judge had just ordered a defendant to kneel and apologize to a police officer in court, an unprecedented event. Kayla's face turned pale. She couldn't believe her ears. The humiliation and anger overwhelmed her, making her want to cry. She glanced quickly at the audience, seeing Jaden shake his head slightly, his eyes burning with fury. Grace covered her mouth, shocked. "Well, don't you want to?" Prescott's voice pressed, devoid of compassion. The two officers escorting Kayla moved slightly closer, seemingly ready to force her compliance. In that moment, Kayla's pride urged her to stand tall and firmly declare her innocence, refusing to kneel. But looking into the judge's cold eyes, feeling the handcuffs on her wrists, she understood that resistance would lead to dire consequences. The entire system was against her. Tears welled up, and Kayla slowly knelt on the cold tile floor. The handcuffs clinked. She felt dozens of eyes on her, including Officer Carter's triumphant gaze. Her lips quivered as she choked out an apology. I'm sorry, Officer Carter. I was wrong." At that moment, time seemed to stand still. A deadly silence enveloped the room. On the judge's bench, Prescott nodded in satisfaction. He raised his gavel and coldly declared, "Court is adjourned. The defendant will be held for 7 days and serve 100 hours of community service as part of the sentence," considering the displayed remorse. Then he turned and walked into the deliberation room, leaving Kayla still kneeling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Below, Grace was so shocked she dropped her phone, while Jaden clenched his teeth. Below, Grace was so shocked that she dropped her phone, while Jaden clenched his teeth, his hands trembling in fists. A burning fury ignited within him. This was not justice. His friend was innocent, but had been forced to kneel and endure humiliation. At that moment, Jaden vowed they would not let this matter fade into silence. He secretly glanced at his phone. He had managed to record the entire scene just moments ago. Kayla was dragged to her feet by two officers, turning her head back to look at her two close friends. Her eyes were red and teary, but a faint glimmer of hope shone through when she saw Jaden give her a slight nod, as if silently promising something. Though the specifics were still unknown, all three of them understood. The fight to reclaim justice for Kayla, for all those who had been treated unjustly, had officially begun at that very moment. 3 days after the trial, weak sunlight filtered through the tiny barred window, casting a dim glow on Kayla's weary face. Inside the Jefferson County Jail's holding cell, she sat curled up on the cold bunk bed, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The cacophony from the hallway echoed guards shouting, iron doors clanging, heavy footsteps all adding to her turmoil. Kayla had endured 3 long nights in jail, tormented by countless thoughts. Initially, she felt indignant and hopeless. The image of herself kneeling in the courtroom haunted her, causing her to wake up in the middle of the night with tears streaming down her face. But each time, she remembered the determined looks of Jaden and Grace that day. They had promised not to let this matter fade into oblivion. That thought was like a small flame flickering in the darkness, giving her strength. This morning was visitation day. Kayla waited anxiously in the visiting room. The heavy door opened, and Jaden and Grace entered. Both looked visibly worn, dark circles under their eyes and tense expressions. They, too, had likely endured restless days. Kayla picked up the phone behind the glass partition, her lips trembling into a faint smile. "I'm okay," she spoke before they could ask, trying to appear strong. "Just 4 more days, and I'll be out." On the other end, Jaden's eyes were red. "We're sorry, Kayla. You shouldn't have to go through this." His voice choked. Grace placed a hand on his shoulder, gently. "We promise to get you out sooner if we can. But at least you're safe for now. Have you been bullied or mistreated?" Kayla shook her head. "I'm fine. The guards are strict, but no one's done anything to me." Honestly, she had feared being the only black woman in the cell might make her a target. But fortunately, nothing bad had happened. "How about you guys?" Any news outside? Jaden and Grace exchanged glances and nodded. Jaden leaned closer to the glass, lowering his voice. "We haven't been idle. We've started digging into Judge Prescott and the police." He paused, his eyes flashing with anger. "There's more bad stuff than we imagined. Kayla," Grace continued, "we've spent the past 2 days gathering information from court records, local newspapers to town residents. The findings are truly frightening." Kayla gripped the phone tightly, her heart racing. "What did you find?" Jaden's voice deepened. "First, about Officer Carter, the one who arrested you. He has a long history of problematic incidents. Many black individuals in the area have complained about being stopped without cause, yelled at, and abused. Some even reported unnecessary use of force, but all complaints were dismissed by the Jefferson County Police Department. We've heard whispers that Carter has someone backing him." Grace nodded, her eyes filled with disdain. "Not just Carter. We've also looked into Judge Prescott. He's known for being strict, but it seems only towards certain people." She paused, exchanging a glance with Jaden before continuing. "Over the past 5 years, Prescott has presided over dozens of cases involving minority defendants. The conviction rate is very high, and the sentences are often harsher than average for the same charges." Jaden added, "Remember the case of Brian Thompson last year? The black guy sentenced to 5 years for petty theft? People said he only stole some baby formula because his family was poor, worth less than $50. Prescott still coldly handed down the maximum sentence, claiming, "Such criminals need to be punished as a deterrent." Jaden's voice was bitter as he recalled. Kayla's eyes welled up. She remembered the news about Brian and had felt outraged for his situation. Now she herself had become a victim of this unjust system. Grace continued, "Not only that, we've found another pattern. Those who receive harsh sentences are mostly people of color or immigrants. But if the defendant is white, Prescott often gives probation or lighter measures, even for similar or more severe crimes." Kayla clenched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her intuition was correct. The judge had a clear bias. "So, did you find any connection between the judge and the police? I feel like they're colluding," she asked softly. Jaden nodded slightly. "Yes. Official information is hard to come by, but we've spoken to a neighbor of mine, Mr. Robert Evans. He retired from the Jefferson Police Department a few years ago. He said Prescott and Sheriff Raymond Moore are very close. At every holiday or major county event, they appear together, with photos published in local newspapers. Mr. Evans also mentioned an organization called the Heritage Leadership Foundation. Both the judge and the sheriff are key members." Heritage Leadership Foundation. What kind of organization is that? Kayla frowned. The name sounded formal, like a cultural fund or something. Grace opened her notebook, flipping through a few pages of notes. "From our preliminary research, it's officially a non-profit organization working for leadership development and preservation of local heritage." "Sounds impressive. Their headquarters is right in downtown Jefferson." "The member list isn't public, but through news articles and event photos, we can see it's full of big names judges, the sheriff, some county council members, wealthy businessmen. Even the mayor of Jefferson has attended their events." Jaden emphasized. Mr. Evans quietly said that organization is actually a shadowy power group. It's like a private club for the local elite, where they collaborate to decide everything from key personnel appointments to who gets favored and who suffers. Apparently, they also have extreme ideas about heritage preservation, which can be interpreted as maintaining the power of an old group, resisting change. That implicitly involves racial discrimination. Kayla felt a chill. She thought about the region's history. Virginia had communities still heavily influenced by ancestral discriminatory ideologies. "Are you sure about this? If it's true, it's terrible. It's like a covert racist organization." Grace nodded sadly. "It's hard to find direct evidence, but everything we've pieced together points that way. For instance, Wesley Becker, a wealthy local businessman and main sponsor of the Heritage Leadership Foundation, has been accused of discriminating against black employees in his company. Then there's Sheriff Moore. His subordinates are all familiar confidants, mostly white. Officers like Carter are tolerated despite their notoriety." Jaden sighed, rubbing his face wearily. "We've also tried to talk to some past victims. Like Brian Thompson's family, they left the county after he went to prison because of constant harassment. Or Maria Lopez, who was wrongfully arrested for disturbing the peace when she was actually peacefully protesting for housing rights. She said Prescott ignored favorable evidence for her and imposed the maximum penalty. Maria said in Jefferson, 'If you don't bow your head, you'll only suffer.'" Listening to her friends' accounts, Kayla felt both sorrow and anger. The justice system was supposed to protect the people, yet here, it was distorted to serve the interests of a select few. She recalled the moment she was forced to kneel and apologize, not just a personal humiliation, but a warning to the entire community: don't challenge the current power. Her voice hoarse. "We have to do something. We can't let them continue to oppress innocent people like this." Grace nodded firmly. Exactly. We've thought it through. The first step is to bring your case into the public eye. They might manipulate things here, but they can't blind the whole world. Jaden lowered his voice further, leaning close to the glass. We have solid evidence, the video I recorded during the trial that day. I've saved a copy in a safe place. We'll upload it online, send it to the press. When the whole country sees the judge forcing you to kneel, they'll be outraged. Then, public pressure will weigh heavily on Prescott and Carter. Kayla's heart pounded. She had thought about that video during many sleepless nights. It was powerful evidence of the abuse of power and discrimination she had suffered. But she also worried, are you sure? If we post it, won't we face retaliation? I'm afraid you guys will be in danger. Jaden smiled reassuringly. Kayla, we won't let you face this alone. Of course, it's risky. But if we stay silent, they'll become even more arrogant. We have to accept the risk to achieve justice. Grace added, her eyes shining. I've thought even further. Not just the video will write a full account of the incident, along with the information we've gathered about Prescott, Carter, and that heritage organization. I have some friends studying journalism in New York. We can ask them to share this story with major news outlets. If all goes well, your story will be on television or major newspapers, sparking a thorough investigation. Kayla was speechless with emotion. The friendship and dedication of Jaden and Grace warmed her heart. She placed her hand on the glass, trying to reach her beloved friends through that cold barrier. Thank you. Thank you both. She choked. I trust you. Let's do it. Let's let everyone know the truth. The three friends looked at each other, their eyes sharing the same determination. What they were about to do would be fraught with challenges, but the flame of justice in their hearts had ignited. The day Kayla regained her freedom would also be the day Jefferson County had to face the light of truth. The battle had only just begun, and they were ready to confront the entire system to reclaim justice. 4 days later, Kayla was officially released from temporary custody. The moment she stepped out of the Jefferson County Jail, she saw Jaden and Grace waiting for her. Kayla took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air of freedom she had yearned for over the past week. For a brief moment, the three of them embraced tightly, tears of relief and lingering frustration mixing together. But they knew this reunion would be short-lived. A much bigger battle was waiting ahead. We have to move fast, Jaden whispered, glancing around cautiously. In the distant parking lot, a patrol car sat silently. Though it might have been a coincidence, all three felt a wave of unease. Grace nodded in agreement. I don't think they'll let you go that easily. Kayla, it's best we leave right away. They quickly got into Grace's car, an old blue sedan parked by the roadside. The car pulled away from the jail, leaving behind its gray concrete walls. In the rearview mirror, Kayla caught a glimpse of the patrol car still sitting there, not giving chase. She let out a small sigh of relief, but a heavy sense of foreboding still lingered. Grace drove toward the outskirts, carefully avoiding downtown Jefferson. They decided to head to a safe location, Grace's aunt's house in a remote area of the neighboring county. Her aunt was away on vacation, and the empty house would serve as a perfect hiding spot for a while. During the ride, Kayla removed her worn-out prison clothes and changed into a simple outfit Grace had brought. She noticed the red welts on her wrists, remnants from the handcuffs. Her eyes shone with determination. It was time to expose the truth. That evening, inside Grace's aunt's cozy wooden house, a warm yellow light spilled out softly. The three friends sat huddled around a laptop. This was the moment they had prepared for uploading the incriminating video. Jaden connected his phone to the computer, and the fateful footage appeared on the screen. They held their breath as they rewatched the horrifying scene, Kayla on her knees, her voice trembling with apologies, while Judge Prescott coldly pronounced her sentence. Even though they had witnessed it in person, seeing it again sent shivers down their spines. "The video is clear, and the audio's pretty good too," Grace commented, trying to keep her voice steady. On the screen, Prescott's face appeared sharply as he uttered his cruel words. Officer Carter was also captured, his expression cold and unflinching. Jaden gritted his teeth. "Let's see how they deny this. The evidence is crystal clear." He quickly copied the video file to the laptop and backed it up to an external hard drive. They had agreed to release the footage on multiple platforms, social media, news agencies, and anonymously to several justice advocacy channels. Kayla placed her hand on Jaden's shoulder, whispering, "Thank you. It's because of you recording that we have a chance to reveal the truth." Jaden offered an encouraging smile. "For you, and for the truth." Grace opened a browser and logged into a newly created anonymous Twitter account, as well as a brand new YouTube account. She had also prepared an email addressed to the hotlines of several major newspapers and human rights organizations. They decided to title the video "Judge Orders Defendant to Kneel in Court, Justice or Humiliation." The video description summarized the incident: a young woman mistreated and discriminated against in Jefferson County Court, accompanied by a call for official investigation. Before clicking upload, the three of them shared a final look. Kayla grasped her friend's hands tightly and said, "No matter what happens, I won't regret this. We're doing the right thing." Jaden nodded, and Grace pressed her lips together in determination. Then, Grace clicked the mouse. The video was uploaded. The next few hours passed in tense anticipation. At first, views and shares increased slowly. They patiently sent the link to every contact they could think of, from reporters Grace knew to activist groups on Facebook. Before long, one of Grace's friends in New York responded, saying she worked for an online news outlet and promised to put Kayla's story on the front page within hours. Sure enough, about 3 hours later, Kayla's phone buzzed nonstop with notifications. On Twitter, the video began attracting thousands of views, shared by major accounts. The hashtags "Justice for Kayla" and "Kneel for Justice" were trending rapidly. Comments exploded beneath the YouTube video. "This is disgusting. Who lets a judge do this? I can't believe this is happening in America. This needs an investigation now. Stand strong, young lady. The whole community is with you." Each message fueled Kayla's strength. She wasn't alone. Countless strangers were outraged and raising their voices in support. Soon, major news outlets joined in. First, an online news site published a headline-grabbing article: "Scandal in Jefferson Judge Accused of Forcing Defendant to Kneel Before Officer." The article recounted the incident with supporting evidence from the video, also mentioning allegations of racial bias within the local justice system. Next, CNN quickly picked up the story in an evening broadcast, showing blurred footage from the video and airing outraged commentary from guests. Kayla's story had transcended a small county's borders. It was spreading across America. In the small house, the three friends embraced each other as they watched the news on TV. Tears welled up in Kayla's eyes. "They're listening now." Grace smiled through her tears. "Yes, they're hearing you. Kayla, justice is finding allies." Jaden squeezed the two girls' shoulders, feeling a flicker of real hope for the first time in days. However, they knew the storm was only beginning. Indeed, the very next morning, Jefferson County authorities held an emergency press conference. On TV, Judge Alan Prescott appeared alongside Sheriff Raymond Moore and a legal representative. Prescott's face looked tense, but maintained an air of dignity. He declared that the video was edited and taken out of context, asserting that the defendant voluntarily showed remorse and that the court was merely following protocol to maintain order. Sheriff Moore accused Kayla of having a history of defiance and claimed there would be an investigation into the dissemination of misleading information causing public alarm. Kayla seethed at their blatant distortion of the truth. "They're calling justice public alarm," she said bitterly. Grace fumed. "They're twisting the story to make you the villain, but no one will believe them. The evidence is undeniable." Though she spoke with conviction, all three knew that the battle for public opinion had begun. Indeed, the social media post of the press conference was flooded with thousands of angry comments. "Lies. You're the ones panicking because you've been exposed." Independent media outlets mocked Jefferson County's response, further fueling public outrage. Still, Kayla realized that Prescott and Moore wouldn't back down easily. If they couldn't silence public outcry, they would likely target the insiders directly. That afternoon, as Kayla was about to rest after a tense night, Jaden burst in from outside, his face flushed with worry. "It's bad," he panted. "I just called home to grab some things, and the neighbors said the police raided my house this morning." What Grace gasped. Kayla's heart skipped a beat. Did they say why Jaden shook his head? The neighbors saw them with some papers, probably a search warrant. "They broke in, ransacked the place. They asked the neighbors about me and both of you." Grace clenched her jaw. We knew this could happen. "They're trying to find evidence or seize the devices we used to upload the video. Luckily, we did it from here. They won't find anything at your house, but this proves they're determined to go after us." Jaden looked worriedly at Kayla. "Worse, they might soon track us down here through phone signals or the car. We should move now." No sooner had he spoken than they heard the distant roar of engines. Grace rushed to the window and peeked through the curtains. At the end of the dusty road, 2 black SUVs were rapidly approaching. "Oh my God! 2 vehicles! Probably police!" Grace exclaimed. Kayla's stomach tightened. How had they found them so quickly? Perhaps the local authorities had used their power to trace Grace's phone signal or the car's license plate. They had barely 24 hours before being hunted down. "Run!" Jaden shouted, grabbing the laptop bag and hard drive, their most crucial evidence. Kayla and Grace snatched their bags and dashed toward the back door, fleeing across Aunt Grace's backyard. Outside the front door, the sound of a car door slamming and a commanding voice rang out. "Police open the door, now." No response came. Another voice growled, "Break it down." Kayla heard the loud crash of the front door being forced open. Sweat drenched her forehead as she and her friends sprinted through the yard, wildflowers brushing their legs under the midday sun. Thankfully, behind Aunt Grace's house was a narrow alley leading to a side road. The 3 friends ran as fast as they could. Jaden led, glancing back. Several uniformed officers were already spilling through the back door, spotting them. "Stop!" a voice bellowed, followed by the sharp crack of gunfire. A bullet struck the ground near Grace's feet, kicking up dirt and gravel. She screamed and stumbled forward. "Grace!" Kayla cried, stopping to help her, but Jaden was quicker. He hauled Grace up, his hand scraped and bleeding. "Run!" he yelled, shoving the girls forward, breathless. Kayla instinctively pulled out her phone to call 911, but she quickly stopped. Who would she call? The police, the very ones chasing them? A wave of despair washed over her, but her legs kept moving. At the alley's end, there was a deserted intersection. Grace's car, hidden behind bushes by the roadside, was their escape. "Get in the car!" Grace shouted, limping to unlock the driver's door. Her leg was likely sprained from the fall, but adrenaline kept her going. Jaden stuffed the laptop bag into the back seat, and the three of them piled in. The engine roared to life. The car veered sharply, speeding off just as the officers reached the alley's end. Another gunshot rang out, shattering the rear window, but no one was hit. The sedan sped onto the main road, leaving the pursuers scrambling to their vehicles. Behind the wheel, Grace gritted her teeth through the pain, focused on driving. Kayla and Jaden gasped for breath, hearts pounding. "Is everyone okay?" Kayla asked between panting breaths. "I'm fine. Just scared they'll catch us," Jaden said, glancing in the rearview mirror. The two SUVs were in pursuit, a few hundred meters behind and accelerating. Grace floored the gas pedal. The old car shuddered as the speedometer crept up. The country road wound through grassy hills. "We need to find a way to lose them," Grace said loudly, sweat dripping down her brow. Behind them, the officers were gaining, sirens wailing. Jaden's hands trembled as he clutched his phone. "We can't keep running forever. We'll run out of gas. There must be another way." Just then, he spotted a small turnoff into a pine forest ahead. "Turn there," he pointed. Grace glanced briefly and swerved. The tires screeched as the sedan darted into the tree-lined path. Pine branches scratched the windows. The three held their breath. The road was rough and narrow. Would the SUVs dare follow? The car plunged deeper into the forest, leaving only a cloud of dust and fallen pine needles behind. 1 minute, 2 minutes. They no longer heard sirens or engines. When certain they had lost their pursuers, Grace slowed down and turned off the engine. The three looked at each other, pale and shaken. They were still alive, still free, for now. In the silent woods, only the wind whispered through the trees. Kayla broke down in tears, a mix of fear and anger. Jaden wrapped his arms around the two girls, his voice hoarse. "We made it, but this is too dangerous. They even fired at us." Grace exhaled deeply, leaning her head against the steering wheel. "I didn't expect it to escalate so fast. They're acting like we're dangerous criminals." "We've hit their pride and power," Kayla said, wiping her tears, her eyes growing determined. "They fear the truth, so they're panicking and trying to catch us at any cost." Jaden nodded. "There's no turning back now. We have to keep fighting." His eyes blazed with fury. If they're willing to shoot at civilians in broad daylight, they've shown their true colors. A heavy silence settled. No one spoke, but they shared the same thought: they needed a new, stronger plan and perhaps help from the outside. Kayla recalled the contact number for a human rights lawyer she'd seen on TV. Maybe they should reach out. But first, they needed a safe place to hide. "We should leave this area, maybe go to another state for a while," Grace suggested. "I have a friend in Washington, D.C. We might be able to stay with them temporarily." Jaden shook his head. "That won't be easy. The police have probably issued a nationwide search warrant for us under some made-up charge. No matter where we go, we could be recognized." Kayla suddenly spoke up, her voice calm. "Maybe we should consider contacting the FBI. Our video might have caught their attention by now. If the FBI steps in, the local authorities won't be able to act so arrogantly." Jaden and Grace fell silent, considering. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was perhaps their best hope to bring this case to light. But how could they reach them? Would the FBI believe a group of young friends? "For now, let's get out of here," Jaden said, restarting the engine. We'll figure it out. Maybe we should try contacting the FBI. There's no other choice. The car slowly rolled forward, hidden beneath the dense trees. Though the future was uncertain, one thing had become increasingly clear. Kayla's group had dared to challenge an entire system, and now there was no turning back. They could only move forward. That afternoon, Kayla's group's car emerged from the pine forest, winding along remote country roads. They agreed to temporarily turn off their mobile phones to avoid tracking. Under the gray sky, everyone was exhausted after the tense chase. Eventually, Grace drove the car to an abandoned rest stop along the interstate highway. The place was deserted, with only expansive fields of yellowed grass and a small diner that had long since closed. The three of them got out of the car to check for injuries. Fortunately, aside from a few scratches and a shattered window, none of them were seriously hurt, but their spirits were shattered. Jaden walked a bit away. Looking back along the road they had come from, there were no signs of police pursuit. He sighed with relief, returning to where Kayla and Grace were sitting on the old wooden steps of the rest stop. "What now?" Grace asked, breaking the silence. "We can't stay out in the open like this forever. I'm worried they'll soon call for reinforcements from other counties to track us down." Kayla nodded weakly. "We need to find a safe place first. Or maybe we should try calling the FBI hotline. I think they might already be aware of our situation." Jaden frowned. "What are we going to use to call? Using a phone could easily reveal our location." Grace suddenly remembered that closed diner over there probably doesn't have a landline. "But I brought a basic cell phone without GPS for emergencies." She rummaged through her backpack and pulled out an old mobile phone. This one can only make calls and send texts, hopefully harder to trace. They decided to take the risk. Kayla dialed the FBI's main hotline number that she had found in a newspaper. The phone rang several times, her heart pounding. After a few minutes of exchanging information with the hotline operator, the call was transferred. Kayla gripped the phone tightly, trying to speak as quickly and clearly as possible about their situation. She was the person in the video forced by the judge to kneel. And now, she and her friends were being unjustly hunted by local police, with their lives in danger. She pleaded for the FBI's help. A calm male voice on the other end spoke. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Special Agent Daniel Coleman from the FBI Civil Rights Division. We've been following your case. Where are you now? Are your friends safe?" Hearing the words FBI, the three of them felt as if they'd grabbed onto a lifeline. However, Kayla remained cautious and didn't immediately reveal their exact location. "We're hiding near the state border. Jefferson police are shooting at us, framing us as criminals. Can you guarantee our safety if we come forward?" Special Agent Coleman hesitated for a moment before replying. "I understand your concerns. At present, we've noted that you are being pursued without proper legal procedures. While we cannot officially intervene immediately, I want to help you. I can arrange a meeting in a safe location outside of Jefferson County. Would that be acceptable?" The three of them exchanged glances. This was exactly what they had hoped for, a helping hand from an FBI agent. But could they trust him? Jaden spoke up. "How do we know you're really with the FBI and not someone sent by them to trap us?" The agent on the other end responded quickly. "Good question. I'll prove it. I'm currently in Washington, D.C. But in just a few hours, I can drive to the meeting point. You choose the location. I'll come alone and bring my credentials and authorization for you to verify. I also have a photograph of the three of you on file. Kayla, you're in an orange prison uniform. Right, I'm betting my career on this move, so please trust me." His voice was sincere and urgent. Kayla thought quickly, then decided, Okay, we'll trust you this time. Meet us at McGill's Diner near the old gas station at exit 105 on Interstate 80. 8 p.m. tonight? Understood. I'll be there. Stay hidden until then. And keep an eye out for anyone following you. They can be very cunning, Coleman advised. The call ended. Kayla looked at her two friends, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I think he's genuine, she whispered. Jaden nodded. Only the FBI would know you were wearing orange. They must have seen footage from the detention center or records. I believe him. Grace smiled softly, relieved. At least someone in the government is willing to listen to us. I hope he can help. At exactly 8 p.m., a silver sedan pulled up to the dimly lit parking lot of the abandoned McGill's Diner. Kayla, Jaden, and Grace were hiding behind a low wall nearby, anxiously observing. From the car stepped a man in his early 40s, tall and slender, wearing a leather jacket. He stood under the headlights of his car, raising his hands slightly to show he was unarmed. Kayla, Jaden, Grace, it's me, Special Agent Coleman. Are you here? He called out in a voice just loud enough to be heard. The group slowly stepped out. Stay right there, Jaden called, gripping a small wooden stick for defense. Prove you're from the FBI. Special Agent Coleman complied, slowly pulling a leather wallet from his jacket, opening it and holding it high. Under the car's headlights, they could clearly see the FBI badge and a photo ID glinting. Kayla cautiously stepped a bit closer, her eyes wary. The agent handed her the ID Daniel Coleman, ID number 57321, Federal Bureau of Investigation. After a few moments, Kayla nodded slightly, signaling her friends. They stepped forward to join her. Coleman put his ID away, his eyes showing empathy. Are you all safe? Is anyone hurt? We're fine, Kayla replied. Just very worried. Thank you for coming. Her voice still trembled after a long day. Let's get into my car and talk. This vehicle has anti-surveillance systems. It's safer. Coleman gestured toward his sedan. The three exchanged looks, then decided to trust him and got into the car. Inside the car, the atmosphere was more secure and warm. Special Agent Coleman turned his seat to face them. First of all, I apologize for what you've been through. I've been following the case since your video went viral. The FBI office in Washington has also received orders to coordinate with the Department of Justice for a preliminary investigation. However, formal investigation procedures take time, and I'm concerned for your safety. Jaden nodded bitterly. They really tried to kill us today. They shot at us like we were animals. Coleman's eyes darkened. I believe you. The actions of the Jefferson police this time have crossed the line. I also heard they've issued warrants for your arrest, accusing you of assaulting an officer and fleeing custody. Fortunately, no one has been caught yet. What are your plans now? Grace spoke up. Honestly, we were hoping the FBI could help us. We can't keep fighting them alone. We want you to protect us and investigate. Bring those corrupt people to justice. Coleman was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. Protecting you is our duty. I promise to do my best. But investigating those people isn't easy. We need solid evidence of federal violations, such as conspiracy to violate civil rights, to arrest both the judge and the local police. Kayla sighed. We have the video, my testimony, and others. Isn't that enough? The agent furrowed his brow. That video is definitely valuable evidence. It helps convince the Department of Justice to intervene. But to prosecute for civil rights violations or corruption, we need more like proof they conspired to suppress the people. Right now, we only have indirect evidence, Jaden realized. You mean we need clear evidence about the so-called Heritage Leadership Foundation? We suspect that organization is at the heart of everything. Coleman was surprised. You know about that group already. He nodded. Yes. That's the big target we've been quietly investigating. But they're very secretive. The organization hides behind a charitable foundation and legitimate political activities. But we suspect it's actually a secret supremacist group. They want to maintain the old power structure, eliminating any perceived threats, including minorities demanding rights. Grace swallowed hard. Sounds like an old-time conspiracy. Have you found anything so far? Coleman shook his head. Not much. We have leads on some key figures involved. Judge Prescott, Sheriff Moore, businessman Wesley Becker. They hold secret meetings regularly. But these meetings are highly secure, with no recording devices allowed. We also haven't been able to plant an insider. Kayla pressed. What about this time? After everything that's happened, will they meet? The agent gave a slight smile. You guessed right. According to the information I've received, tomorrow night the Heritage Leadership Foundation will hold an emergency meeting at their headquarters in Jefferson, apparently to handle the situation. There's talk that Judge Prescott, Sheriff Moore, Officer Carter, and several top figures will attend. Jaden tensed. If we can record that meeting, they'll probably discuss how to cover it up or even get rid of us. That's the evidence we need. Coleman's eyes sparkled with approval. Exactly. If we can capture them saying anything that proves they intentionally violated the law, like plotting to harm you or the public, that's the key to bringing them down. Grace leaned forward, eager. So, do you have a plan to capture that evidence? Will you raid the place or set up surveillance? Agent Coleman hesitated. That's the issue. Like I said, we can't officially act yet due to the lack of solid evidence to get a court order. If we break in and record them without proper authorization, the evidence might not be admissible in court, and it could put everyone's lives in danger. My superiors want to wait, but I'm afraid if we wait, you or other witnesses might be harmed. Kayla looked deeply into the agent's eyes. That's why you came to see us. You mean, you want us to help gather evidence? Agent Coleman nodded slowly. I don't want to push you into more danger, but honestly, you have an advantage as insiders, and since you're already forced to hide, you might be able to conduct a covert investigation more discreetly than we can. He reached into the seat beside him and pulled out a small bag. I brought some equipment, miniature recording devices, a tiny camera if you're willing. A moment of silence passed. Jaden, Kayla, and Grace exchanged glances. They all understood this was a huge risk. But then Kayla spoke first, her voice firm. We're willing. This is our only chance to bring them down. Right. Grace grabbed Kayla's hand. Yes, for us and so many others. I don't want to live my whole life in fear. Jaden declared with determination. We'll do it, with your support. Agent Coleman sighed in relief. You're incredibly brave. I promise to do everything in my power to protect you. Now, let's plan. He pulled out a map of Jefferson and the Heritage Leadership Foundation's headquarters. It was an old stone building situated on a large plot of land near the outskirts of town. There weren't many houses around, making it easy to act, but also easy to be noticed if there was any disturbance. According to Coleman's plan, the following night, before the meeting started, Kayla's group would sneak into the building through the back door or basement window. The agent had obtained the building's security layout. There were cameras covering the main entrance and hallways. But the back door leading to the kitchen had no cameras, only a locked door. Grace was confident she could pick the lock, thanks to a fun survival skills course she'd taken in college. After breaking in, they would install the recording devices and hidden camera in the main meeting room, a ground-floor conference room. Coleman provided them with 2 thumb-sized recorders, which could be stuck under the table or in a corner, and a button-sized disguised camera that could be placed on a bookshelf. All of the devices would automatically record and transmit signals to a receiver that Coleman would monitor from outside. After you plant the devices, you must leave before the meeting begins, Coleman emphasized. I'll be nearby in a surveillance car, monitoring the signal and ready to assist if necessary. But avoid direct confrontation. If you're caught, your lives will be at serious risk. Those people would rather eliminate you than let anything leak. Kayla felt a chill run down her spine, but she nodded firmly. Understood. We'll be careful. Coleman turned to Jaden. You're the strongest one here, so you'll handle the heavy tasks. If you need to subdue a guard, you'll take care of it, but try to avoid any fights. The quieter, the better. Jaden clenched his fists. I understand. I'll do my best. They discussed in detail possible scenarios. If the back door lock was too difficult, they would try climbing up to the second-floor balcony via a drainpipe and entering through a window. Coleman provided a set of master hex keys for unlocking windows. If they were discovered by guards, they had a can of pepper spray for self-defense and a quick escape. The plan made everyone tense, but also ignited a strong determination. This was the final gamble if they succeeded. The truth would be revealed. If they failed, they might not get another chance. Before parting, Agent Coleman gave them a dedicated phone with a single contact number his own. Call me immediately when the job's done, or if there's trouble. I'll be very close. Kayla took the phone, looking straight at the agent. Thank you. Really. We trust you. The agent gave a kind smile. Don't thank me. Thank yourselves for your courage. Let's work together for justice. He drove the group to a small motel on the outskirts of a neighboring town for the night. There, for the first time in many days, Kayla was able to shower and rest on a soft bed. But sleep was elusive. Her heart raced as she thought about what lay ahead. In the darkness, she silently prayed for tomorrow to go smoothly, for justice to be served, and for everyone to stay safe. That night, no one in the group slept much. They quietly prepared themselves mentally for the crucial showdown. Outside the motel room window, the pale moonlight filtered through the clouds, illuminating the three silhouettes ready to risk everything for the truth. The next night, a thick darkness enveloped the compound of the Heritage Leadership Foundation on the outskirts of Jefferson Town. The two-story granite building loomed under the dim moonlight. The clock struck 11 p.m., just half an hour before the Heritage Group's emergency meeting was set to begin. Cold winds whispered through the ancient oak trees nearby, as if heralding the coming storm. Behind the building, a black-painted van was parked beneath the shadows of the trees. Inside, Agent Coleman made a final check of the transmission equipment. An earpiece connected him to the mini recording devices that Kayla's group carried. He spoke into a tiny microphone. "Can you hear me clearly?" Grace's whispered voice replied loud and clear. "We're approaching the back door, about 10 meters away. Kayla, Jaden." And Grace crouched low behind the thick bushes, quietly moving toward the back entrance of the building. They wore tight black clothing, donned gloves, and each carried a small backpack with tools. Kayla's heart pounded in her chest, her palms slick with sweat despite the cold wind. She glanced at her friends. Jaden took a deep breath to steady himself, while Grace gave a small nod to signal readiness. The back door came into view, a thick wooden door with a shiny metal lock. Grace pulled a hairpin and a small tool that Coleman had provided from her hair. Her hands trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath and began to work on the lock. "Steady now. You can do this," she whispered to herself. Jaden and Kayla stood on either side, keeping watch over the eerily quiet backyard. In the distance, headlights occasionally swept across the main road, but this area remained deserted. Click. The soft sound echoed as the lock snapped open. Grace whispered with relief. Got it. Jaden gently pushed the door. It opened silently. The lubricant was still fresh, indicating the place was in regular use. Inside was a pitch-dark kitchen. The group quickly donned black masks and stepped in, closing the door behind them. The darkness was thick, but Kayla had memorized the layout. She turned on a small flashlight, its dim beam just enough to see the path. They crept down a short corridor leading to the main hall. According to the plan, the meeting room was located immediately to the left of the hall. As they neared the meeting room door, they halted. Distant voices drifted from the front of the building. People were already arriving. Looks like some arrived early, Jaden whispered. Let's hurry. Kayla pressed her ear to the meeting room door. Silence. She slowly turned the knob. The door wasn't locked. All three slipped inside and closed the door. The meeting room materialized dimly under the flashlight beam, a long oak table in the center, surrounded by 12 plush leather chairs. Large portraits hung on the walls, likely of the organization's founders. Their cold, penetrating eyes seemed to follow the young intruders. There was no time for fear. Grace quickly pulled out 2 tiny recording devices. She crawled under the conference table, securing one under the chairman's position and the other on the opposite side. Jaden searched for a place to set the mini camera. He noticed the top corner of a large bookshelf, ideal for covering the meeting table. He climbed onto a chair, affixed the disguised black button-sized camera to the corner, and carefully aimed it at the table. Done, he whispered. Kayla stood near the door, listening intently. Footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. The intruders were close. She urgently signaled, her lips mouthing, "Someone's coming." Jaden immediately climbed down from the chair. The trio looked around for a hiding spot. The room was quite bare, except for the large table. Behind the curtain, Kayla pointed to a thick velvet drape covering a side window. They quickly hid behind the curtain, trying to make themselves as small as possible. The door to the meeting room creaked open. The glow of the hallway light spilled inside. 2 silhouettes entered, and a familiar, deep voice broke the silence. This mess is a real problem. We need to handle it decisively. Prescott. It was Police Chief Raymond Moore. Then came Judge Prescott's dry voice. I told you, that girl and her insolent friends were bound to cause trouble. We should have crushed them from the start, and none of this would have happened. Kayla's heart threatened to leap out of her chest. Just a few steps from their hiding place behind the curtain, the 2 ringleaders stood right there. Peering through a gap in the drapes, she saw Prescott and Moore approaching the conference table, unaware of the hidden intruders. Prescott placed a folder on the table, while Moore paced anxiously. So, what's the plan? The FBI's beginning to sniff around, Moore murmured nervously. The FBI can't do anything if we clean up properly, Prescott replied. First, we need to get our story straight tonight. Where's Carter? Probably patrolling outside, Moore answered. He's furious. He swore he'd personally deal with that Mitchell girl if he catches her. Kayla shuddered at the mention of her name, her body trembling. Jaden lightly placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Prescott sneered. His temper might be an asset, but tell him to keep it discreet. My plan is to pin them with domestic terrorism charges, so the public will believe that shooting them was justified. Moore nodded. Right, they broke in, spread subversive information. It's not hard to accuse them of terrorism. The FBI will struggle to defend them. Prescott continued with a triumphant smirk. Tomorrow, I'll sign emergency arrest warrants for all three of them on terrorism and attempted murder charges. Once they're labeled domestic terrorists, they're finished. No one will defend them. Then, during the raid, suspects resisted arrest and were fatally shot, a perfect cover story. Don't you think Moore laughed darkly? Perfect. Just like what we did last year with that. What was his name? Oh, Malik Jenkins. That black kid we framed for drug possession. We chased him, and eventually, bang, justified self-defense. Nobody questioned it afterward. Prescott snorted. A few of those lowlifes die, and no one cares for long. The important thing is keeping our positions. He paused, his tone turning serious. But this case is different, because the media's involved. So we need to set the trap carefully. No evidence, no witnesses. Moore ground his teeth. I'll personally lead the raid. Tomorrow morning, I'll have officers set up an ambush near where they're likely to show up. If they don't appear, we'll pressure their family or friends until they surface. And when they do, he punched the air viciously. A bullet for each of them, including that Mitchell girl. Then we'll stage the scene to look like they fired first. Prescott laughed wickedly. Good. Once we clean this up, we'll have the media spin the narrative and bury that kneeling video. With money and connections, everything can be smoothed over. Kayla felt a chill race down her spine, her limbs turning to jelly. She glanced at Jaden, who clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with fury. These men were openly plotting murder and had even killed, before her heart ached as she remembered innocent victims like Malik Jenkins, whom they had just callously referenced. Yet, amidst the horror, relief flickered in her mind. Their shameless confessions were now caught on tape. Suddenly, a phone rang from Prescott's pocket, breaking the murmur. He answered irritably. Hello? Yes, it's me. What how? His voice spiked in anger. Damn it! Prescott slammed the phone shut and turned to Moore. Something urgent. There's an issue with my campaign fund at the bank. I need to handle it immediately. You handle the meeting, make sure the message is clear and decisive. I'll return before it's over. Moore nodded hastily. Prescott gathered his briefcase. I'll head out the front. You stay and bring the others into the meeting room. He quickly left the room, the door slamming shut behind him. In the conference room, only Police Chief Moore remained, cursing under his breath. Useless idiots, always causing trouble. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and took a long drag. Then he turned and headed out a side door. Perhaps to the restroom or to check the perimeter. As Moore's shadow disappeared through the side door, Kayla exhaled softly, her knees trembling. She thought she might faint from holding her breath. They were still safe, not yet discovered. But how could they escape? The main hallway was sure to be guarded. Jaden whispered to Grace and Kayla Moore's heading out that side door, which probably leads to another hallway. Let's get out the way we came. The three of them quietly slipped from behind the curtain and crept toward the door they had entered through. Kayla peeked into the kitchen empty. They quickly tiptoed back through the darkened kitchen toward the rear exit. Suddenly, from the far end of the kitchen hallway, a flashlight beam swept toward them. Who's there? A man's voice barked. The beam landed squarely on them. Damn it, Grace gasped. A stocky figure stepped into view. It was Officer Carter. He was holding a flashlight in one hand and a pistol in the other, clearly on patrol. Freeze hands up, he barked, recognizing intruders. There was no time to think. Jaden lunged forward like a shadow, ramming into Carter before he could aim. Both men crashed into a metal rack, grappling fiercely. Get off me! Punk Carter snarled, swinging the butt of his gun at Jaden's shoulder. Jaden winced from the blow but gritted his teeth, forcing the gun hand upward. The gun discharged with a deafening crack, sending a bullet into the ceiling. Kayla and Grace screamed and ducked against the wall. The gunshot echoed through the building. Time was running out. Kayla grabbed the pepper spray from her bag and dashed forward. She sprayed Carter square in the face. He roared, eyes burning, dropping the gun. Jaden twisted the weapon from his grasp as Carter flailed wildly. Jaden's jaw tightened as he landed a sharp kick to Carter's knee, sending him crumpling to the ground. Jaden immediately locked Carter's neck in a chokehold, squeezing until Carter gasped and lost consciousness. "Go now!" Jaden panted, snatching up Carter's fallen pistol. The trio sprinted toward the rear exit, but it was too late. The kitchen door burst open with a crash. Chief Moore stormed in, flanked by 2 other officers, their guns raised. "Freeze hands up," Moore shouted. His eyes blazed with fury as he spotted the trio. Kayla, Jaden, and Grace froze, despair washing over them. Jaden, though holding Carter's pistol, knew they were outgunned and outnumbered. Slowly, he raised his hands in surrender. Moore sneered, stepping forward. "Thought you could escape, idiots? You're done." He glared at Kayla. "Little Mitchell, you think you can humiliate me on national TV and get away with it? Now you'll kneel and beg for mercy." He gestured at her with his pistol. "On your knees." Kayla's legs wobbled as she sank to the floor, trembling. Moore's eyes glistened with sadistic glee. "Good girl. Now, let me record your pathetic end." He pulled out his phone, aiming it at her face while keeping his gun to her head. "Here's what happens to domestic terrorists. 1 shot to the head, just like that. Enough. Raymond." A cold, commanding voice echoed from the shadows at the door. A figure stepped into view. It was Agent Coleman. He stood with his gun drawn, aimed at Moore. "Drop the weapon. FBI." Everyone froze. Moore spun around, still pointing his gun at Kayla. "FBI, you think I care? 1 shot and she's dead? You're outnumbered." The 2 officers behind Moore raised their weapons toward Coleman. The standoff was hair-trigger tense, Coleman alone against 3 armed men with Kayla as a hostage. Coleman's voice was steady but urgent. "You're surrounded. Moore. All of your conversations tonight were recorded and sent to headquarters. FBI agents and state police are already en route. Surrender now, or you'll only make things worse." Moore's face contorted with rage and disbelief. The 2 officers hesitated, glancing at each other nervously. But Moore roared, "Liar! You're stalling! I'll kill her right now!" He yanked the trigger toward Kayla's head. A shot rang out, sharp and shattering. Kayla cried out, feeling herself yanked aside. But there was no pain. Agent Coleman had thrown himself between her and the bullet. He collapsed onto her, blood soaking through his shirt. His face twisted in agony as he whispered, "You did well." Simultaneously, Coleman's gun fired, striking Moore in the shoulder. Moore howled, dropping his weapon. The 2 officers, terrified and disoriented, froze. Jaden leapt to grab Carter's dropped gun, aiming at them. "Drop your weapons!" Now he shouted. Grace raised the pepper spray, ready to strike. The 2 officers, faced with a decisive threat and their leader incapacitated, dropped their guns and surrendered. Moore clutched his bleeding shoulder, crumbling to the ground in shock. The sound of sirens howled in the distance. State police and FBI backup had arrived. Black SUVs with flashing red and blue lights stormed the compound, agents fanning out to secure the scene. "FBI, drop your weapons," the agents commanded as they entered. The remaining officers surrendered immediately, Moore included, now pale and trembling. Kayla ran to Coleman, cradling his head. "Stay with me," she whispered, as his breathing faltered. "Stay with us. We did it. Justice is coming." Kayla knelt beside Coleman, her hands trembling as she tried to stanch the blood seeping from his chest. "Please, hold on," she whispered, her voice cracking. Coleman's lips moved, barely audible. Kayla leaned closer, catching his final, whispered words. "Tell my wife and kids I'm sorry. Love them. So much." A tear slipped from the corner of his eye as his hand went limp in hers. "No. No," Kayla sobbed, her voice breaking. Around her, Jaden and Grace stood frozen, the weight of what had just unfolded bearing down on them. They had survived, but at a cost none of them were prepared for. Jaden clenched his fists, his face streaked with blood and tears. Grace dropped to her knees beside Kayla, pulling her into a silent, shaking embrace. The trio sat amidst the chaos, surrounded by flashing police lights and the heavy thud of footsteps as FBI agents and state police secured the scene. Just outside the shattered doorway, Judge Prescott was being hauled from his luxury car by agents. His face was a mask of disbelief and rage as he was handcuffed and led toward the waiting convoy of vehicles. His gaze darted toward the conference room, and for a moment, his eyes locked with Kayla's. She stood slowly, wiping blood and tears from her face. When she met Prescott's eyes, there was no fear, only a calm, defiant resolve. For the first time, the man who once held the power to destroy her looked away, defeated. Behind her, the FBI agents finished cuffing Moore, his face pale and twisted with pain. His once arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by the stark realization that his reign of terror had ended. The other officers, subdued and disarmed, were being processed by the arriving task force. Kayla, Jaden, and Grace watched as the entire corrupt network crumbled before them. The sirens wailed, their shrill notes mingling with the hum of radios and the clatter of handcuffs. Under the flashing lights, it felt as though the night sky itself bore witness to the moment justice reclaimed its place. In the distance, the sound of an approaching ambulance grew louder. Paramedics rushed forward, but it was too late for Coleman. His sacrifice had ensured that the truth would not be buried. Kayla knelt beside him one last time, pressing her forehead to his cooling hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Jaden placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll make sure he's remembered. We'll make sure his family knows he was a hero." Grace nodded, her eyes shimmering with fresh tears. "And we'll keep fighting. For him, for everyone like him. We owe it to him." As the trio stood together, the sky above them slowly lightened with the first hints of dawn. The long, dark night was ending not just for them, but for all those who had suffered under a system that thrived on fear and silence. For Kayla, the journey ahead would still be long and uncertain. But in that moment, she felt the strength of 1,000 voices of those who had been silenced, those who had been wronged, and those like Agent Coleman who had given everything to make sure the truth prevailed. The battle was over, but the war for justice was just beginning. At dawn the next morning, Jefferson County woke to an unprecedented political earthquake. News of the arrests of Judge Alan Prescott, Sheriff Raymond Moore, and several high-ranking officers spread like wildfire. The local television station interrupted regular programming to broadcast live from the scene. Across the nation, viewers saw images of the once powerful judge now in an orange prison jumpsuit, handcuffed and head bowed, being led out of the Heritage Leadership Foundation headquarters. Close behind, was Sheriff Moore, his shoulder bloodied, staggering amid a swarm of federal agents. Further back, Officer Carter and several accomplices were paraded out in chains. A CNN anchor reported, "This is a shocking revelation for the Jefferson County community. A large-scale corruption and racial discrimination conspiracy has just been uncovered." According to FBI sources, Judge Alan Prescott and Sheriff Raymond Moore are accused of colluding to abuse their positions to oppress and even harm innocent citizens over many years. Dozens of prominent figures in the county are also under investigation in connection with the Heritage Leadership Foundation. Locals gathered outside the sheriff's office at dawn. As the convoy carrying Prescott and his cohorts departed, a roar of outrage erupted. Criminals, traitors. Some hurled trash and bottles at the convoy. The scene stood in stark contrast to the reverence these men once commanded. Meanwhile, at Jefferson Hospital, Kayla and her friends stood silently around a hospital bed. Agent Daniel Coleman had not survived the journey to the hospital. The doctors stepped out, shaking their heads solemnly. The courageous agent was gone, leaving behind a wife and 2 young children who would forever be without a husband and father. Kayla's group wept uncontrollably. His sacrifice was etched deeply into their hearts. They held hands in a circle, bowing their heads in a moment of silence for the fallen hero. By midday, Kayla and her attorney were invited to the temporary FBI headquarters set up at Jefferson City Hall. A major press conference was held. A U.S. Department of Justice representative, a federal assistant prosecutor, solemnly declared, "We officially indict former Judge Alan Prescott, former Sheriff Raymond Moore, and 5 other co-conspirators on charges of conspiracy to violate civil rights, resulting in death, first-degree murder, abuse of power, and numerous other serious crimes." Each charge was met with gasps of astonishment from the assembled press. The assistant prosecutor continued, gravely, "Today is a sad day for Jefferson County, but also a day of justice. No one, no matter their position, is above the law." In the audience, Kayla sat quietly amidst thunderous applause. Tears streamed down her face, this time tears of relief. At last, the truth had prevailed. Immediately following the press conference, all charges against Kayla were officially dropped. Her previous wrongful conviction was expunged. A temporary federal judge overseeing Jefferson County met privately with Kayla to apologize on behalf of the system. He shook her hand sincerely. "What you endured was terrible. On behalf of the judiciary, I apologize. Ms. Mitchell, you are very brave." News of Kayla's exoneration spread everywhere. Friends and neighbors gathered at her home, no longer fearful of surveillance, to celebrate. Kayla's mother, who had traveled from another state, embraced her tightly after days of sleepless worry. In the following days, the Virginia state and federal governments launched a coordinated cleanup of Jefferson County. A series of search warrants were executed at the homes and offices of the accused. Documents, letters, and emails from the Heritage Leadership Foundation were seized as evidence. Shocking secrets gradually surfaced in the media. The foundation was, in fact, a haven of white supremacist ideology, masquerading as a charitable organization. They had built a network of influence supporting Prescott's ascent to a judgeship, rigging elections to ensure Moore became sheriff, in exchange for these men shielding illegal operations and safeguarding elite interests. They had even compiled a list of troublemakers to be punished, including activists and outspoken citizens. Kayla and her friends were on that blacklist because they dared to expose the truth. In addition, many previous victims bravely came forward to share their stories. The family of Brian Thompson, Maria Lopez, and the relatives of Malik Jenkins, whom Moore had mentioned, all filed petitions requesting the reopening of their cases. The Department of Justice pledged to review all convictions handed down under Prescott's tenure. Thanks to this, Brian was granted a pardon, released from prison, and his honor restored. The Malik Jenkins case was reopened, and the officers involved in his shooting were stripped of their badges and faced prosecution. Across America, the Jefferson County scandal made headlines. Major newspapers ran front-page stories. Justice kneels, the dark side of the judicial system exposed. Young Friends unmask racial discrimination network in government. Images of Kayla Mitchell standing strong at the press conference, with Jaden and Grace by her side, became iconic on social media. People compared the case to historic scandals and praised the courage of those who stood up. That evening, in Jefferson's Central Square, hundreds of residents gathered for a candlelight vigil to honor the victims and celebrate the heroes. The song "We Shall Overcome" echoed solemnly amidst flickering candlelight. Kayla, Jaden, and Grace stepped onto a small stage, clutching a framed photo of Agent Daniel Coleman, his warm smile blurring their vision with tears. Jaden spoke on behalf of the group, his voice thick with emotion. "We were just ordinary citizens who dared to speak the truth. But the real hero is Agent Coleman, the man who gave his life for justice. He will live on in our hearts forever." Many in the crowd wept openly. The vigil ended with a long, resounding round of applause, as though sending gratitude to the heavens for Coleman and all who had suffered injustice. That night, for the first time in so long, Kayla slept peacefully in her mother's embrace, her heart at ease. Justice had been reclaimed, and the spirits of those lost were finally at peace. 1 year after the shocking events in Jefferson County, the sky there seemed bluer, the golden sunlight warmer. The small town had turned a new page. The federal trial of Prescott, Moore, and their accomplices concluded with appropriate sentences. Alan Prescott received life imprisonment without parole for murder and violation of civil rights. Raymond Moore also received a life sentence. Accomplices like Officer Carter were sentenced to decades in prison. When the federal judge announced the sentences, none of the defendants dared to lift their heads in protest. The evidence was too clear. Their crimes laid bare before the public. At the sentencing hearing, the victims' families had the opportunity to speak. Malik Jenkins's mother choked up as she spoke of the pain of losing her son, while Brian Thompson's father angrily recounted the years his son suffered unjustly. The courtroom fell silent when Kayla Mitchell was invited to speak. She stepped forward, her eyes shining with confidence. "I stand here not to seek revenge, but to affirm that justice will always prevail. What you did caused immense suffering, but because of it, our community has become stronger, more united in the fight for righteousness." Her words resonated, many nodding in agreement. Prescott bowed his head, shoulders slumped as if he had lost everything. That was the last image people remembered of him before he was led away. Following the Jefferson case, a series of reforms were implemented. First, the Heritage Leadership Foundation was officially disbanded, its assets confiscated to establish a fund supporting their victims. The Virginia state legislature passed the Coleman Act, named after Agent Daniel Coleman, to enhance oversight of local judges and police departments. This law mandated the formation of independent committees with citizen participation to monitor trials and handle misconduct complaints. Additionally, all court proceedings were now permitted to be officially recorded to prevent abuses of power in the courtroom. "No one will have to kneel in the shadows anymore," declared the governor of Virginia upon signing the law into effect. At the federal level, the Department of Justice established a special task force dedicated to investigating extremist groups infiltrating government agencies. It became evident that Jefferson County was not an isolated case. There were other heritage organizations that needed to be exposed. The movement advocating for judicial and police reform spread widely. Many states pushed for similar legislation, requiring body cameras on police officers, transparent trials, and diverse recruitment in leadership positions. As for Jefferson County, after the storm, the land was reviving. A new sheriff was appointed, a woman of African American descent, with a record of integrity, receiving enthusiastic support from the community. The county court also welcomed an interim chief judge from another state to restore order and review each old case. Trust in justice was gradually being restored. For Kayla Mitchell, Jaden Walker, and Grace Morgan, their lives also turned a new page. Kayla returned to university, but chose to switch her major to law. The harrowing experience she had endured further motivated her to become a lawyer to protect the vulnerable. She received an honorary scholarship named after Daniel Coleman, awarded by a human rights law organization. Whenever she studied in the law school library, Kayla would recall Agent Coleman's encouraging smile and remind herself to emulate his courage. Jaden, once a mechanic, had now become a social activist. He joined a nonprofit organization fighting against police violence, traveling to give speeches sharing the Jefferson story. The photo of Jaden raising the flag of justice at the candlelight vigil had become an emblem on reform campaign posters. As for Grace, the once intelligent young girl was now a reporter for a major newspaper. Her investigative series on the Heritage Leadership Foundation earned her a prestigious journalism award, helping to expose the roots of hateful ideologies. The three close friends remained tightly bonded. Together, they founded the Coleman Justice and Hope Foundation, aiming to provide free legal support for wrongfully accused victims and train young people to become leaders of integrity. The foundation operated actively with the participation of many volunteers and reputable lawyers. Each year, on Agent Coleman's death anniversary, the foundation organized a memorial ceremony and awarded scholarships to law students aspiring to serve the community. The story of Kayla and her friend's journey to reclaim justice was made into a documentary and included in university curricula. Many schools invited them to speak, inspiring thousands of young people. During one seminar, a student asked Kayla, "What helped you overcome fear to stand up?" Kayla smiled and replied, "I think about the simple truth that justice belongs to everyone. No one has the right to take it away. When you keep that belief in your heart, you'll have the courage to fight, even if it means sacrificing." Jefferson County had now become a symbol of change. From a place once manipulated by dark forces, it now stood as living proof that even the most rotten systems could collapse before the power of truth and courage. The lesson from Jefferson spread: every citizen, no matter how small, can make a significant difference if they dare to stand up against injustice. One spring afternoon in Washington, D.C., Kayla Mitchell was invited to speak before the House Judiciary Committee about her experience. In the solemn room, she recounted her story, from the humiliating moment of kneeling in court to the punishment of the wrongdoers. The legislators listened attentively, many moved to tears. Concluding her speech, Kayla quoted Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." She looked around the room, her voice choked. That light, that love that is justice and truth. We've seen it shine in Jefferson County, and I believe it will continue to illuminate this entire nation. The entire chamber stood up in resounding applause. In that moment, Kayla felt clearly from pain and loss. Blossoms of hope had bloomed. Her story and that of her friends had become a flame igniting faith in justice, inspiring countless Americans to stride forward on the path of reform, toward a more just and compassionate society. Even though the night may sometimes be long, the dawn of justice will come, and when it does, no one will have to kneel, except to honor truth and human dignity. And so, from a single spark of defiance, an entire corrupt system came crashing down. This story is a testament to the strength of truth, the courage of ordinary people, and the hope that justice will always prevail, even in the darkest of times. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories of justice, courage, and the human spirit. Together, let's spread these stories far and wide, because every voice matters.